They finally manage to light the campfire and are about to receive their first medals when Kevin's bomb blows up the dam and the camp is completely flooded. Upon returning home, the girls ask how their friend's adventure went and the minions start to cry. In an attempt to console them, Agnes and her sisters give some of their badges to the trio, and the Badger Guide relives his worst nightmare when all the other minions decide to become scouts to earn their... The minions decide to open their piggy bank to buy the appliance, but only find a quarter inside. So they decide to work to make a little extra money and steal the gardening equipment of a guy who has just mowed his neighbor's lawn. After a few minutes walking around the neighborhood, the group finds their first customers, but, as usual, they make a big mess while providing gardening services. Despite not being able to do the job properly, the little ones make the elderly people who live there laugh, and Gertrude decides to give them a container full of coins as a reward for the fun they have. Discovers that a gang of squirrels has captured Max. Super Gidget goes after them and climbs a giant tree to rescue his friend. After defeating dozens of rodents, she finally reaches the top of the tree, where she finds a house made of wood. When she gets there, she discovers that the dog is being controlled by a flea called Infestor. The insect has the ability to control minds and claims that it will soon take over all the dogs in the city. On hearing this, Gidget charges at the creature and Infestor sends the bulldog to attack her. During the battle, at that moment, the flea leaves the body of its host and takes control of Max. After freeing himself from the chains, the dog walks towards Gidget, because Infestor knows that she would never be able to attack him. When cornered, the dog decides to use a vacuum cleaner to catch the insect and manages to free Max. Shern's seeking revenge. However, when she goes to attack him again, the dog ends up hitting her head on the wall and wakes up. She then discovers that it was all just a dream. We will now move on to the story called The Secrets. Leave the house. The grumpy dog goes to visit the neighbor's poodle, with whom he is completely in love. However, after discovering that Bella has already been taken by a handsome German shepherd, Kyle is heartbroken. Believing that he can win her over with that object, Kyle breaks into the store and Miriam, the owner, decides to give him the collar as a present. The dog quickly returns to his neighborhood and runs in front of Bella. At that moment, he spits out the rubber toy he had accidentally swallowed and, to his surprise, the dog is more interested in the toy than the collar. When she hears her owner calling for dinner, Bella leaves and, before entering the house, gives Kyle a wink. At that moment, the dog realizes that this is the happiest day of his life. We will now move on to the story called Wagon Ho. Once Lur has just arrived in the forest of Trufula when two bears appear and climb into his cart. The man then forbids them to ride in the cart and says he'll be back very soon. However, as soon as once Lur enters his house, the Barbaloots use an apple to attract the donkey attention and he begins to chase it. However, after a few minutes of running, the animal reaches the top of a mountain and is exhausted, so it decides to lie down for a nap. At this point, the cart comes off the hook and starts to slide down the hill. Immediately, the donkey gets up and starts running after the vehicle, but can't catch up. When he realizes that he is about to fall off a cliff, one of the bears decides to use the fabric covering the cart as a parachute and manages to glide back to once Lur's house. Then the donkey also arrives on the scene and everyone positions themselves exactly as they were before. When the man appears, he realizes that the Barbaloots have followed his instructions and thanks them for keeping an eye on his cart. However, when the vehicle collapses, once Lur realizes that they have been up to mischief and is furious. So what did you think of this movies? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like the video, like and subscribe.